If you're looking to buy a new house, it's a good idea to have your electrical system inspected so you know what you're getting yourself into. In general, it's fairly unlikely you'll find anything that should scare you off or make purchasing the home a deal breaker. The point of the inspection is to give you a general awareness of what kind of condition the system is in, and if you want to add anything in the future, what you may or may not have to do. So the first place I would start is outside at the electrical system where everything comes in. The reason I like to start on the outside of the house is because this is where the power first comes in. So if we tend to see an issue out here, we know that issue might impact what we see on the inside as well. And we take a look here to see what kind of condition the meter's in, the meter socket's in, what type of wiring is coming into the building, if it's in conduit, is it bare conductor, what kind of shape is it in, is anything corroded. Then we'll look at the point of attachment up top. Is it secure? Are the connectors corroded? Is there a potential failure up there? And kind of inspect this overall system to make sure everything's in good condition. So the overall condition of this outside electrical service is pretty good. The conduit's in good shape, the meter socket's in good shape, there's no obvious corrosion, no holes in the bottom of the meter socket itself. But there is one problem area we did find, and that's up top. The point of attachment that's there to hold the service coming over from the pole to the house isn't attached. The only thing holding that wire up is the wire itself and the metal that's been wrapped around this soffit. We need to make sure we reattach that anchor and open up where the weatherhead is above the service as well. Next, I'll take a look at the electrical panels. This will give us an idea of how much power we have coming in, what's available for future use, and what's currently being used. So here we actually have 2 panels, and that's because this is a condo. We have 2 units, 1 panel per unit. In this case, we're going to focus on panel number 2 for the unit we're working on. We're going to look at the general condition and see what kind of shape it is, see if there's any obvious signs of moisture getting in here or some kind of problem. So at a quick glance, there's no rust, the bottom's nice and solid, there are no open knockouts that I'd worry about something falling in, everything's pretty well sealed up. It looks like a lot of the proper connectors on the wires coming in, and everything feels pretty solid. So now that we start to take a look at the inside, we'll start up top at our main breaker for this. We know we have 100 amps for this unit. And then we'll take a look at the breakers inside and see what we have. We want to see if anything feels loose, feels a little funny, see if any of them are warm to the touch. That's never a good sign either. That means something may be loose or it might be drawing a little too much power and the breaker isn't doing its job anymore. The other thing we want to look for is we want to make sure that the breakers are the proper breaker to be in the panel. You can't just interchange whichever breaker you want with whichever panel it happens to fit in. So here at the label, it'll tell you the manufacturer of the panel and what breakers are acceptable to install in this panel. If you have an older home, you may find that you actually have a fuse panel in place, and that's an indicator of an older system. That may be something you want to look at having upgraded at some point. One of the last things we want to check now is we want to make sure that we have our grounding electrode conductor in place, and that's the ground wire that comes from our service to either ground rods, your water service, or some kind of other electrode. We want to make sure that's intact and the right size. And while we're in the basement, this gives us a chance to take a look at what types of wiring we have in the building. Typically we're going to see an M cable, that's perfectly fine. You might find an older cloth-covered cable, and that could be fine too, as long as it's in good condition, the insulation hasn't broken down, and you don't see any signs of damage. And then we go back to knob and tube. If you find knob and tube, you really want to look at having that replaced, since a lot of places can't be insured if they have active knob and tube in there. That's something you want to have removed and rewired appropriately. And finally, I'll head upstairs and I'll take a look at the fixtures and the receptacles. For the fixtures, we want to take a quick look and see if there's any physical damage, any parts hanging, obvious corrosion. And the biggest thing to take a look at is, are the lamps the correct size? We want to make sure that they're not oversized so we don't have an overheating issue. Next, we'll take a look at the receptacles. And for the receptacles, one of the big areas we want to focus on are the areas where there might be moisture, such as kitchens, bathrooms, basements, exterior of the home. I want to make sure that we have GFCI protection, whether it's done by a receptacle or a breaker itself. So GFCI is ground fault circuit interrupter, and what this does is it senses a certain amount of current coming into the device being used and a certain amount coming back out. If it sees a slight imbalance, something as small as 5 milliamps, it'll turn the power off to help prevent you from getting shocked. It's always a good idea to use a tester to test the wiring configuration to make sure that it's wired correctly and to see if you really do have a ground wire in that 3-prong receptacle. And every once in a while you find something unusual, and in this case we did. Underneath this blue tape that someone thought was a good idea is actually an old floor receptacle that's, I'm not sure how old, that looks like it's still possibly active. No metal plate, not really held in, just waiting for something to fall through and hit it. We want to make sure that we de-energize this, take this out, put a nice solid cover plate over it, and make sure nothing falls in here that could cause a problem. And if I can give you any advice when you're looking at the electrical system in a new home you may be purchasing or in a home you may already own, it's don't panic. Just because things aren't up to today's current codes doesn't mean that it wasn't built to the codes at the time that the house was done. It's a good idea to update things as you start to renovate. If you make changes, things down the road, then yes, we want to bring it up to code and bring it up to date. But just because it's not up to today's code doesn't mean that it isn't safe.
We get a lot of pictures from home inspectors and from folks just like you about some of the craziest things you've seen around the house or on the job site. All right, boys, who's up first?
That's me. That's me.
All right, what do you got?
So
Mark?
this is actually not a nightmare. See how that wraps around that chimney?
What
That
is it?
vegetation.
What do you got?
What are we
Look
looking
at
at?
that. Look at the chimney.
Oh,
Does it
that's
have
the
leaves?
chimney.
That's the
Oh,
chimney.
my
I thought that was a tree.
I did too.
What is a tree? Where'd this come from?
So I was actually driving around my hometown, took a corner, saw that.
So this is one of your neighbors.
This is one of my neighbors.
They're going to
but
appreciate that.
The reason it may not be a nightmare is because people don't know this, but that type of vegetation wrapped around brickwork, not necessarily chimneys, but brickwork, it actually protects the brick. So if I tore that off, I bet you the brick would be in great condition.
And what you do twice a year, you call the dog groomer in to give it a poodle.
and little trim.
All right, what else you
How
got?
about this one? All right, do you see anything wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
So this is from Andy in Adams, Massachusetts. This is a washing machine setup right here.
Oh, okay.
And there's a drain and there's a vent. And the vent is supposed to continue up through the roof and let the vent products go
And
out.
something magical happens.
Correct. So they put a can of soda in it to act as the cap and sort of...
To block the vent.
Correct, and that's not exactly right. It keeps the sewer gas coming out. But if you actually run the wrong thing down that drain, that could turn into a can of pop.
Wow. Do you get that, Kevin?
You're writing your own stuff now?
I am.
Dad joke.
Yeah, Dad.
All right,
joke,
look at this,
exactly.
huh? All right, now think about this.
Wow, look at...
All right,
Wait,
look
what's
at it,
going
look
on?
at it, study it. Well, that's an outside wall, but now there's a divider in there, but that's a carrying wall right there. Look at the structure in that wall.
What structure?
Reminds me of an old line that I said on this old house many years ago. I got through this scene like nothing. When you remove structure, you have to replace structure.
I was there. It took you 32 takes to get there.
Yeah, I think it was
Tommy,
30.
something you said many years ago. You said that
32 on
yesterday
center.
and on Monday
Oh,
and
yeah.
last Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
You say once
Pay
a week.
attention to the picture.
Sorry,
I'm
sorry.
Thank you.
Look at that. I mean, they beat up that structure so bad that what do you do with it? You've got to take it out and reframe it. I mean,
That's got to go.
I mean, that door opening has more structure than that wall.
Is there a header on that entire wall?
if there is, Mark, I don't know where it is.
Anyway, you can see that we enjoy them. So if you've got them, send them our way. Home inspection nightmares.
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Hey, good morning. How are you guys doing?
Hey, Tom. Good to see you.
Dan and Alyssa, is this the door you wrote me about?
This is the door.
Oh, it's a beauty.
Yeah, we think it's original to the house, built in 1918.
Yeah, it could be original to the house. Looks like the finish is burnt right off of it.
Yeah, it definitely needs a lot of love, and we love this door, and we want to restore it back to its original beauty.
You want to restore it. You don't want a new door. Mm-mm. All right, well, it's a lot of work to restore a door. I mean, this molding detail right here, as beautiful as it is, you can buy something similar to this off the shelf. We could take it off and just replace it.
I mean, we really love this door. We'd like to keep, everything as is, but, clean it up, make it look brand new, I guess.
Yeah, it's a beauty. It's got a nice dental detail down here with a cornice molding and then a slope right here to make up this little pediment. That's a nice little detail. And down here, you can see the veneer on this panel is all lifted and cracked. That'd have to be fixed. And over here, you can see that somebody patched a hole for a deadbolt and put a new one in, but they didn't line it up right. So, a lot of work. But yeah, if you're up for it, I'm up for it.
We're ready to go.
All right, well, let's get it off the hinges and we can get started.
Okay, sounds good. Let me help you out.
All right. All right, let's set it down right here. Okay, so now I guess the first thing we want to do is try to get some of this molding off, get the glass out, and then we can go after the hardware. I'll try this little bar, we'll try a bunch of different things, whatever works. So that edge of this molding underneath here has a little notch taken out of it so it can sit on the face of the door. So what we need to do is get under there just a little bit. Nice and easy. Stretch it out. Yeah, see, Nate, you can get under there. Just,
All right.
yep. All right. Let me reposition down here. I just don't want to get under that glass either, so. Come on. There it is. Yeah, nice.
There we go. Nice and easy.
Yeah. Slow and steady, right?
That's right. Here we go.
Wow.
That. Nice. So see, there's the little rabbited edge that I was talking about right there. So this part right here sits right on the face of the door, and it wraps around, making that joint more weather tight. All right, let's work our way around.
That's a good sound, right?
Yeah. I just gotta watch that joint. Nice and easy, yeah. Oh yeah, it's coming off nice. So now the next thing we're going to try to do is cut this silicone away from the glass. Nice. I'm not a big fan with using silicone to set this window in because the silicone is fantastic for the glass that's non-porous, but when you're dealing with a porous material like the wood, that silicone, when it breaks its connection, will leak. And with silicone and wood, if you try to recaulk that joint, it won't seal to itself. So that means you've got to remove all of the old caulking before you can recaulk it. I would recommend an acrylic or a polyurethane base caulking, or even a butyl caulking in a case like this. Coming up. See if I can pull it out.
Oh, there we go.
Look at that.
That's it.
Nice. Nice. All right, I think we've got all the silicone removed. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to pull the nails out of that molding. We want to pull them from behind, not from the face, because if I tap them down, we could chip the wood and ruin it. So what you want to do is you want to grab the nail tight to the wood and then roll it down gently. Just work your way right down the nail. Nice. You nailed it. All right, now we're set up to strip off the old residue of the finish on these moldings. We can't really sand it because you don't want to lose that detail.
Right.
Now this is a water-based stripper. You want to lay it on kind of thick. Okay. All right, while you guys are doing this, I'm going to start working on some repairs for the door.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Great.
All right. All right, so now the manufacturer says we have to wrap it in plastic so that nothing evaporates off of it. Leave it in there for about half an hour, 45 minutes. All right, so I've cut off this veneer that was cracked and lifted, and we'll put some filler in there because we're gonna veneer right over this whole panel. All right, so let's see how it looks. I just put it in a bucket of water, scrubbed it in the water, and boy, that's cleaning up nicely. Look at that. Yeah.
Looks beautiful.
Yeah,
So different.
We've patched up everything, and the door is all sanded and ready for the new veneer.
Why do we need to add a veneer on here?
Well, because the veneer that's on the door now is pretty beat up.
Yeah.
It got beat up by the sun. We had to fill the holes and voids and stuff like that. And you'd worry about the glue separating from the backside of the veneer.
Okay.
Now, have you ever seen a veneer in a roll like this before?
I have not.
Well, veneers are pretty common on cabinet doors, floors, and doors just like this. It allows them to have, like this case is a piece of mahogany, as opposed to this piece of mahogany being 2 inches thick, it's a 1/16 of an inch thick. And so we're going to cut this veneer in strips so we can do our stiles and our rails. It's good to have a nice sharp knife when you're doing this. Now that piece that we're going to cut off is about a 1/2 inch wider than we need because we'll trim it later. All right, now we want to glue this down onto one of the rails. And you notice that I cut it a little bit longer because I want it to overhang that joint slightly. So I want a little bit down here, a little bit down there, and the width is going to be good. We're going to keep this edge even with the inside of the panel. So the first thing I want to do is I want to peel some of this back to expose the glue. But I don't want to take it all off. I just want to peel it up a little bit, like that. Fold it down. Okay, so now we're going to line it up again. Don't push it down onto the glue until I say, good, I'm overhanging my joint and you are overhanging yours. Keep it flush right there. Yep. All right, how's it look? All right?
Looks good.
So now we just push this down like that. So now we know that it's straight. It's going to line up because it's not going to move. Now I'm going to pick up. I'm going to pull out the paper off the back to expose the adhesive. And slowly push it right down. Go back a little more. Pretty good. Now we're going to roll it, and I want to start in the middle and work my way out. That way, if there's any bubbles under the veneer, we'll work them right out.
Sounds good.
And now we'll repeat this process for the rest of the veneer. Peel it off and slide it down. Now we'll go ahead and cut the excess with a knife. So now what we're going to do is we've got a new lock set for the front door. So that means we have to bore some new holes to match up with the new lock set. All right, we're ready to install a sanding sealer, and that will help with the adhesion of the finish. I want to put a bead of glazing around the opening so we can set the glass in it. Set it in there nice and gently. And you're going to drop yours down as far as you can before you let it go. That nice fit.
I know a lot of work went into the detail on this trim, but I'll tell you what, it looks great.
Doesn't it look good? Look at that. I mean, it's a fantastic door. It's like a brand new door, right?
Absolutely, looks beautiful.
We'll get them into the opening, and then we're going to nail them on. Good. Let's see if it still fits. It still fits. Still fits, and it looks good. All right, we've got our primer coat on. Now we're ready for one of our final finish coats.
Okay.
We're going to roll on our first coat of urethane. This is a semi-gloss. So we hung it in the opening so we can do both sides of the door at the same time, but also later on this evening you'll be able to close the door. You want to have a door overnight, right?
I like that.
All right, so I'm going to put the hardware on. This is the hardware that you picked. It's really nice.
Oh, I love the look of it.
So I'm going to get this installed. All right, guys, what do you think? The door is done and hung, and look at the hardware. Pretty nice.
Looks great.
All right, so I have some homework for you. What I want you to do is wait for the door to really dry. It's dry to the touch right now, but I want it to dry for about 24 hours. Sand it light with some 220 paper, wipe it off with a damp rag, make sure it's no moisture on the door, and give it another coat. And do that 2 times.
Can do that.
All right, well, I'm going to leave it to you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Thanks
Thank
again.
you so
Looks
much,
great.
Tom.
My pleasure. Glad I could help.
Tommy, that is just awesome. I love that transformation. It's so cool.
I love taking an old door like that and giving it new life.
So when it comes to old doors, when people hear a door that's 100 years old or so, I think they're probably thinking it's a solid piece of wood. And it might be surprising to find out that it's not always that way.
Right, and some doors could be, but most of the time when you say a solid wood door, people don't realize that the core of the door could be something like this top right here. It could be individual pieces of wood that are glued together.
Right.
But the benefit to those individual pieces for the core of the door actually gives the door more stability than one solid piece.
Right, we actually think that maybe the rail is one piece, that the style is one piece, but that's not necessarily as stable as this. This is more stable, which is why they build it, and then they cover it with the veneer.
They cover it with the species